August 23rd, 1996, a young woman, 25 years old, 7.5 months pregnant, disappears without a trace. Fiona Pender wasn't out walking. She wasn't running errands. The last time she was seen alive, she was in bed, inside the small flat she shared with her partner, John Thompson, right in the center of town, just minutes from the Garda station. Just one day before she vanished, Fiona was picking out baby clothes at the shopping center with her mother, preparing for the birth of her first child. Hours later, she said goodbye to her mother outside her flat, not knowing it would be the last time. No signs of struggle, no confirmed sightings, no answers. Nearly 3 decades later, the question remains, what happened to Fiona Pender? Welcome to Crimes That Haunt Us, the channel where we dive deep into the most chilling and mysterious cold cases. If this interests you, hit subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments to help us grow. On a warm July afternoon, a teenage girl walks home, greeting her neighbors, unaware she'll never be seen alive again. Within hours, she's reported missing. By morning, her case dominates headlines, linked to a disturbing pattern of vanished women, some never found, others discovered months later in remote locations. Fear spreads across Ireland. The Vanishing Triangle is born. And so too is a dedicated task force, Operation Trace, tracing, reviewing, and collating evidence. The team was initially assigned to investigate the disappearances of 6 young women. Annie McCarrick, an American student who vanished in March 1993. Jojo Dollard, last seen hitchhiking in November 1995. Fiona Pender, a heavily pregnant woman who disappeared in August 1996. Kira Breen, a teenager who left home one night in February 1997 and never returned. Fiona Sinnott, a young mother who vanished in February 1998. And Deirdre Jacob, last seen near her home in July 1998. But as the investigation deepened, more cases emerged. Women who had been abducted and murdered, their bodies later discovered in remote locations. These are their stories. This series is based on retired Irish detective Alan Bailey's book, Missing, Presumed, featuring first-hand Garda accounts and comprehensive evidence, bringing you the most in-depth look at Ireland's most chilling unsolved cases. Unlike the other 2 women who vanished without a trace, heavily pregnant Fiona Pender was last seen alive in the early hours of Friday, August 23rd, 1996. She was not out walking or running errands. She was in bed in the small flat she shared with her partner on Church Street, right in the center of Tullamore town. Just a short walk from the local Garda station, she should have been safe. When questioned, her partner would tell Gardaí that when he left for work at 6 a.m., Fiona, 7.5 months pregnant, was suffering from heartburn. He claimed that he only became aware of her disappearance when her mother, Josephine Pender, contacted him on Saturday evening nearly 2 days later. It was at her parents' insistence that he finally reported her missing. At around 10 p.m. that night, he walked into Tullamore Garda station to formally file the report. But by then, precious hours had already been lost. The last known movements of Fiona Pender paint a picture of a young woman excited about her future as a mother. On Thursday afternoon, just one day before she vanished, she and her mother had spent time shopping at the local Bridge shopping center, picking out items for her unborn baby. Fiona was just weeks away from giving birth. Afterward, they visited the Pender family home in Connolly Park, where Fiona spoke with her father before taking a taxi back to her flat on Church Street. Her mother traveled with her, and at around 7 p.m., they parted ways outside Fiona's front door. It was an ordinary goodbye. Neither of them knew it would be their last. The bond between Fiona and Josephine was unbreakable, described by neighbors as more like sisters than mother and daughter. The thought of Fiona vanishing without a trace was unthinkable, until it happened. Not only was she stolen from her family, but her child too, murdered in the womb before ever taking a breath. Her killer ensured that her parents would never even have a graveside to mourn. At just 25 years old, Fiona Pender had already made a name for herself in Tullamore. A former student of the Sacred Heart Secondary School, she left after completing her junior certificate and took up an apprenticeship at a local hairdresser. She had a natural talent for the job, bright, attractive, and outgoing. She had a wide circle of friends and was well known around the town. Her striking good looks even led to part-time work as a model. But beneath her social life and career, Fiona's true love was family. She adored her 2 brothers, especially her youngest, John. She was fiercely protective of him and would often style his hair in the spiked fashion that was popular at the time. Outside of work and family, Fiona's passion was motorcycles. She was heavily involved in the local motorcycle club for years and had earned a reputation as one of the best riders in the group. It was through this club that she met John Thompson. Where Fiona was outgoing, friendly, and full of life, Thompson was the opposite, quiet, brooding, and withdrawn. He came from a rural farming background, living with his parents and sisters in Grange, just 8 miles from Tullamore. His involvement in motorcycles wasn't about the thrill of riding, but a love of mechanics. The two met through Fiona's brother Mark, who shared her enthusiasm for motorcycles. Their relationship seemed unlikely. Fiona was a townie girl, social, easygoing, and surrounded by friends. Thompson was a culty, introverted, described by many as broody. What happened between them in those final hours remains a mystery. What is known for certain is that on the morning of August 23rd, 1996, Fiona Pender was alive. By the time her disappearance was reported, she was gone, without a trace. A little over a year before Fiona would vanish, in June 1995, tragedy had struck the Pender family. Fiona's brother, Mark, was killed after being knocked off his motorcycle just outside Tullamore in the village of Killy. His loss was devastating. Fiona and Mark had been exceptionally close, and his sudden death shattered her. The shock weighed heavily on her, changing her in ways even she did not fully understand. She never again rode a motorcycle. In a somber tribute, Fiona and her friends from the motorcycle club buried the charred remains of Mark's bike in the Sleeve Bloom Mountains. And in a chilling twist, in the subsequent years that would follow, it was this very place that would be whispered about in dark corners, a possible burial site for Fiona herself. For Josephine and Sean Pender, Mark's death was just the beginning. Having already endured multiple miscarriages, another devastating tragedy was just a year away. Losing Mark left Fiona deeply unsettled. Everywhere she went in Tullamore, every familiar face was a painful reminder of what she had lost. She needed a fresh start. John Thompson agreed, albeit reluctantly, to leave with her, but his parents did not approve. The farm depended on him. His leaving was a betrayal of family duty. Fiona's aunt in London arranged for the couple to move. In November 1995, they left for England, coincidentally just days after another young Irish woman, Jojo Dullard, mysteriously vanished. Once in London, they secured jobs at the Hilton Hotel in Croydon. Fiona thrived in the fast-paced city, but John did not. He grew restless, homesick. He was not a man of bright lights in the bustling streets of London. He belonged in the fields of Grange. By February 1996, their relationship had become strained. To save what they had, Fiona agreed to return to Tullamore. Shortly after their return, Fiona discovered she was pregnant. The news was a light in the darkness for the Penders, coming just months after Mark's death. Plans were made. Fiona would stay at home for the first few weeks after the birth while she and John found a place of their own. How John's family reacted to the pregnancy remains unknown. Whether there was joy at the news of a new Thompson heir behind closed doors is unclear. Fiona and John settled in a cramped bedsit on Church Street, one of over 10 tiny subdivided apartments. As her pregnancy progressed, the rooms seemed to shrink around them. The walls were paper thin. Every argument, every raised voice echoed throughout the house. There was no privacy, no escape. Heated exchanges between the young couple were often overheard by neighbors. It was not a place for a newborn. Acquaintances noticed the strain the pregnancy was putting on their relationship. Fiona was anxious for stability. John seemed distant. It was claimed that doubts about his commitment became more apparent to those closest to Fiona. Fiona and John came from very different worlds. Fiona's family struggled financially. Her father, Sean, had spent long periods unemployed. Yet despite hardship, the Penders gave their children everything they could. They were devout Catholics, hard-working, resilient. John Thompson's family was entirely different. They were Protestant, descendants of the so-called English planters who had farmed the land for generations. As the only son, John was the heir, not just to the substantial family farm, but also to an adjoining estate owned by his bachelor uncle. His future was set in stone. His child with Fiona would stand to inherit an enormous legacy. But did his family welcome the idea, or was Fiona seen as an outsider? By the afternoon of Friday, August 23, 1996, Josephine Pender stood outside her daughter's flat on Church Street. The bedroom curtains were drawn. It was unusual, but not alarming. Fiona might have been resting. Josephine did not knock. Instead, she turned away and left. Later that evening, her father, Sean Pender, passed by the flat on his way home. The curtains were still closed. The entire flat was dark. Still, he thought little of it. Why would he? At that point, no one knew Fiona Pender was already missing. By Saturday afternoon, with no word from Fiona, an uneasy feeling crept in. Josephine and Sean returned to the flat. This time they knocked. No answer. Concern escalated to fear. Josephine called the Thompson family home. She asked for John. When he answered, she demanded to know if he had seen Fiona. His response would send shivers down her spine. "I thought she was with you," he said. He claimed he had not returned to the flat since leaving for work early Friday morning. He said he had slept at his family home that night. Josephine was not satisfied. She insisted he return to Tullamore immediately to help search for Fiona. When he arrived, the flat was exactly how Fiona had left it. No sign of her, no note, no message, nothing. For hours they searched the town, street after street, lane after lane. No sign of her. By 10 p.m. Saturday night, Josephine knew, a mother's instinct. Something was terribly wrong. She walked into Tullamore Garda Station with her husband, her youngest son, and John Thompson. Together, they formally reported Fiona Pender missing. At this point, over 40 hours had already passed since John claimed he had last spoken to Fiona, but the Garda response was inadequate, non-urgent. Like with so many other missing girls of that era, it would not be until the following Monday, more than 70 hours after Fiona was last seen alive, that Gardaí finally visited the Pender home. But by then, precious time had been lost. They secured and preserved the flat. A thorough forensic examination was carried out. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle, no blood, no obvious evidence of foul play. All of Fiona's belongings were in place. Her clothes neatly folded, the baby clothes she had bought still untouched. The only things missing? A pair of white leggings, a navy t-shirt, a pair of white runners. It was assumed she had been wearing them when she disappeared. Fiona's case was different from those of Annie McCarrick and Jojo Dullard. Annie had last been seen in a crowded pub. Jojo had vanished from an open road, but Fiona had a specific starting point, her flat. Despite this, no immediate breakthroughs came. Search teams expanded the operation to nearby waterways, the canal, river, and the reservoir. By Monday, August 27th, appeals were broadcast across local and national radio. Given Fiona's popularity, tips flooded in. Most were of little use. As the investigation into Fiona Pender's disappearance intensified, a disturbing report emerged, one that sent a chill through the investigation team. A male witness came forward with an account that could not be ignored. In the early hours of Friday morning, as he was walking home from a local pub, he passed through Church Street where Fiona and John Thompson lived. There, in the dim light, he saw something unsettling. Two men were struggling to load a bulky object into the rear of a four-wheel drive vehicle. The shape of the object perturbed him. It was wrapped in a rug or a length of carpeting. To this day, no one has ever come forward to explain this peculiar and suspicious behavior, despite extensive Garda and media appeals. Not long after, another witness came forward. He claimed to be driving along a narrow road in the Slieve Blue Mountains some 20 miles from Tullamore when he encountered a four-wheel drive vehicle barreling toward him at breakneck speed. He couldn't make out the make or the registration number, but one detail stood out. A stick-on sign across the windscreen. It read, "Keep her lit." The witness was adamant that the vehicle had only one occupant, the driver. Once again, nobody ever came forth and admitted to being the driver of that 4x4. With no solid leads, the case of Fiona Pender and her unborn baby grew cold. Then, 8 months later, everything changed. On April 24, 1997, Gardaí launched a coordinated operation. Detectives from the National Bureau of Criminal Investigation, or NBCI, along with local officers, executed a series of searches across Tullamore. 5 people were arrested, 3 women and 2 men. They were all related: John Thompson, his 3 sisters, and his father, Archie. For 12 hours they were interrogated about Fiona's disappearance, but in the end they were all released without charge. John Thompson has always denied any involvement in the disappearance of his partner and their unborn child. He has never been charged in relation to the case. 4 months later, on August 21st, 1997, John Thompson spoke to the Irish Times. He was angry. "The Gardaí had no evidence against me or my family," he insisted. "I take a dim view of these arrests." He bristled at the implication that they had disposed of Fiona. "That's not good enough. To make an accusation like that, then leave it at that." He repeated his timeline, that he had last seen Fiona at 6 a.m. on August 23rd, 1996, before leaving for work. As for theories that she had simply disappeared, he didn't believe it. She couldn't have gone missing from a busy town without someone seeing something. He even offered his own theory. "I think someone knows what happened, but is afraid to speak," he said. Rumors had long swirled that John's family, staunchly Protestant, had been against his relationship with Fiona, a Catholic. He dismissed it outright. "That's not even worthy of comment. But I deny it," he said. Despite everything, John Thompson insisted he remained hopeful. "I still believe Fiona and our child are alive," he said, but Gardaí weren't having it. Inspector John Dunleavy responded to Thompson's criticism with force. He refused to comment on specific details of the investigation, but he made one thing clear. "We have interviewed people in the past, and we won't be deterred from interviewing or arresting people in the future." The investigation, he said, was relentless. Search teams had scoured every feasible site in the Laois Offaly area. The search efforts had comprised of sub-aqua teams scouring the waterways, the Air Corps helicopters sweeping vast areas, civil defense personnel, and tracker dogs combing the terrain. And yet, Fiona Pender remained missing. The disappearance of a heavily pregnant woman struck a deep chord with the Irish public. Speculation ran wild, and so too did frustration. The media began raising questions about the handling of the case. Was this yet another example of Gardaí failing to take missing women seriously? Their concern was justified. It would be 2 more years before Operation Trace was formed. Hospitals, health clinics across Ireland and beyond were thoroughly checked. A woman in the final stages of pregnancy would have needed constant medical attention, but there was nothing. Despite an unprecedented level of cooperation from the public, Fiona Pender was never seen again. In the years that followed, Josephine Pender refused to let the world forget her daughter. She took every opportunity to keep Fiona's name and face in the public eye. Her youngest son, John Pender, vowed to do the same. He had already suffered the unbearable loss of his brother Mark. Then, just a year later, his beloved sister vanished without a trace. It was too much for a child to bear, but bear it he did. In 2000, the Pender family was shattered once more. Sean Pender, Fiona's father, couldn't go on. The weight of losing 2 children became too much to bear. On March 31st, year 2000, Sean took his own life in the family home. It was John Pender who found him, but it was too late. Years later, John would speak of that day. He knew his father was gone the moment he saw him, but the paramedics allowed him to perform CPR, one final goodbye. It brought him some solace, some reconciliation. Another 8 years of agonizing uncertainty would pass before Fiona's case was thrust into the spotlight once more. In May 2008, a grisly discovery was made. On the weekend of May 10th, a walker passing through Monachnew, deep in the Slieve Bloom Mountains, stumbled across a makeshift cross. The inscription read, "Fiona Pender buried here, August 22nd, 1996. The date was significant. August 22nd, 1996, the day before Fiona was last seen alive. The area where the cross was found was 4 miles from Mount Rath and 30 miles from Tullamore. Gardaí immediately sealed off a large section of the surrounding forest. But despite their efforts, news of the discovery leaked to the media. Crowds flocked to the scene. An accredited forensic search expert was flown in from England to oversee the search. The operation was meticulous and extensive. Trained military personnel were brought in. Every inch of ground was combed. Hope flickered. After 12 years, could this finally be the moment the Pender family found closure? The answer was devastating. Nothing was found, no remains, no evidence, no answers. The motive behind the cross remains unknown. Some believed it was a cruel hoax. Others believed it was something more sinister. The date inscribed on the cross was linked to a personal trauma in the life of a person of interest in the case. Was this a confession? A moment of guilt? A slip of the truth? Or was it nothing more than a twisted joke? Even now, the handwriting on the cross remains a crucial clue. In time, it may lead to the person who wrote it, but whether that person is Fiona's killer remains to be seen. On July 9, 2013, Tullamore Town Council made a decision. They voted unanimously to rename a stretch of the Canal Bank Walk near Fiona's flat. It would now be known as Fiona's Way. It was more than just a tribute. It was a message. To the person who took Fiona's life, it was a reminder that her name will never be erased, that her memory will never fade, that her family will never stop searching. Fiona was 7.5 months pregnant when she vanished. Her unborn child, due on October 22, 1996, was murdered alongside her. That child would be 29 years old today, possibly a parent of their own. Fiona had already chosen a name. If it was a boy, she was going to call him Mark, a tribute to her brother lost too soon. But Fiona's death claimed more than 2 lives. It claimed a third. Her father, Sean. His killer may not have held the rope, but they may as well have. The same hands that took Fiona's life, the same voices that kept their silence, are stained with the blood of all 3. Back in Tullamore, Josephine, John, and their closest friends kept fighting. They appeared in documentaries, television appeals. They pleaded, they waited, and yet no new leads came. The Gardaí continued their efforts, but with no fresh evidence, Fiona's case remained open but dormant. In 2014, nearly 2 decades after Fiona Pender vanished, Irish media erupted with shocking headlines. Suspect in case of missing Fiona arrested abroad. For the first time in years, there was hope. It soon emerged that a man Gardaí believed to be connected to the case had been arrested in Canada. The suspect, whose identity remains protected under Canadian law, was accused of multiple sexual offences against his wife. In August of that year, he was arrested by the Canadian police and charged with sexual assault. While these charges were unrelated to Fiona Pender, the ensuing investigation uncovered chilling new details. As authorities interviewed the suspect's wife, she provided startling testimony. During questioning, she revealed that her husband had made terrifying threats. When arguing with her, he would invoke the name of his missing ex-girlfriend in Ireland. "You'll end up just like her," he warned. The Irish authorities were immediately alerted. A team of Garda detectives was dispatched to Canada to interview her. She told them something even more disturbing. The suspect had once taken her to a secluded location in Ireland and told her that Fiona was buried there. Armed with this critical new information, Gardaí launched a fresh search effort. The focus was on a stretch of land near a lay-by in Cappard, close to Rossanalis, County Laois. The area was remote, peaceful, frequented mainly by visitors to the Glen Barrow waterfall, but now it was a crime scene. The suspect's wife had been taken to this exact location a decade earlier. She claimed he told her this is where Fiona Pender is buried. It was enough to warrant an excavation. Gardaí have always believed Fiona had been murdered by someone she knew, that her body had been hidden to conceal the crime, and that now they might finally find her remains. For 2 weeks, search teams worked tirelessly. Cadaver dogs were deployed. Specialist equipment was brought in. A 200-meter strip of land was meticulously searched. Nothing. Not one trace of Fiona Pender. Another shattered hope. And another major blow to Josephine. Gardaí would later theorize that the information initially given to the female witness may have been a ruse or a total invention by the suspect. While Irish Gardaí were met with disappointment, the case against the suspect in Canada played out in court. His wife took to the stand, accusing him of secretly filming their sexual encounters while she was unconscious, dressing her up and assaulting her. The accused denied everything, insisting all encounters were consensual. The judge ruled in his favor. The prosecution's case, the judge said, was improbable and bordered on impossible. The suspect was acquitted of all 5 charges. Back in Ireland, Fiona Pender was still missing. No progress, no answers, nothing. By September 2017, Josephine Pender's fight was coming to an end. For over 2 decades, she had carried the unbearable weight of loss. Her eldest son, Mark, dead. Her daughter, Fiona, vanished. Her husband, Sean, gone by his own hand. The years of grief, exhaustion, and relentless searching had taken their toll. She never found Fiona. She never got the closure she deserved. But in her final moments, there was one flicker of light. Her son, John Pender, welcomed a baby of his own. For a brief, precious moment, Josephine experienced joy again. She held her grandchild. She cherished those moments. Then, in September 2017, she sadly passed away. Before her death, Josephine Pender ensured that Fiona's name would never be forgotten. Her tireless activism brought about Fiona's Way, a lasting tribute in Tullamore. She kept her daughter's face in the public eye through documentaries, appeals, and interviews. Now, her fight has been passed on. "The torch has now been passed to me," said John Pender. He remains determined. He will not let his sister be forgotten. Today, Fiona Pender's case remains open, unsolved. Gardaí have a suspect, but without Fiona's body, without her unborn child's remains, the case remains frustratingly stalled. Somewhere out there, a killer walks free, and someone knows the truth. The silence persists, but so does the fight for justice. Thank you for watching and listening to Fiona's story. Please feel free to leave your own thoughts and theories in the comments below, and we'll see you next time.